What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode here at Homestead Studios, and this week I want to talk about small kitchen design. It's no secret that kitchens are used for all sorts of daily tasks, making design even more important for this space. So I've had a lot of comments and questions over the last couple weeks about how to design a kitchen around a small space, because the way we design for a large kitchen often doesn't work when it comes to these smaller spaces. And I want to talk about 6 topics, or 6 ideas, or tips, whatever you want to call them, that really focus in and dive in on designing for small kitchen spaces. Often one of the largest problems with small kitchen spaces is creating enough prep or countertop space. So once you have your appliances in, your sink is in, there often really isn't enough real estate left to create enough work area within your kitchen. And some of the ideas we're going to talk about today apply specifically to creating a little bit more of this prep space for your kitchen. But before we get into any of these 6 specific tips, I want to talk about a few reasons why small kitchen spaces can actually be a blessing in disguise. So the first major advantage is cost. Because you have a smaller space, you need to buy less stuff. This means you can spend a little bit more or splurge in specific areas and get flashier items, whether it's countertops, a specific faucet for your sink, or that backsplash, and not blow the budget in a large area. The second biggest benefit is reno time. Smaller space, quicker reno. This is especially important if you're tackling it via the DIY route, because you are going to be without a kitchen during that period. And the final benefit is a tighter work triangle. Because you're in a smaller space, your work triangle is just often placed closer together. Unlike a large kitchen where your fridge might be in one area, or a stove in another, and a sink in another, still creating that work triangle, but often more spread out, in the smaller space they're closer together, often leading to a little bit more functionality. Now today's video focuses entirely on small scale or small kitchen design ideas. If you are looking for full scale reno or large kitchen design ideas, make sure to check out our video on the common design mistakes we see during kitchen renovations. I'll make sure to throw a link up in the top corner and one down in the description below. Alrighty, let's dive into the 6 tips for small kitchen design, starting with number 1, creating a functional layout. Now, a functional layout is important in any kitchen design, but even more so when dealing with a small footprint. So whether it is a single wall, an L shape, a U shape, or even a galley style kitchen, you're going to want to think about this layout before you get started with any of the design process. Now, if all these terms seem like a foreign language to you, make sure to check out the video all about kitchen layouts in the top corner, where I talk about some of the pros and cons of the varying options we typically see. The first step in creating a functional layout is to make sure your sink, your refrigerator, and your range are all in adequately accessible locations. Now, what we'll often see is a sink on one area and a range and a fridge in another, or some combination thereof that has one appliance as the odd man out, simply because people don't feel they have enough room. Now, what ends up happening is you wind up running across the space as though you have a large kitchen, but nothing looks cohesive and nothing is really that functional. The best place to get started in creating a functional layout is figuring out where these 3 items are going to sit, and then filling in your cabinetry from there. Every aspect of your layout, from the floor plan to cabinetry placement, is all going to play a role in how you use your kitchen in the end. And you'll either wind up with a kitchen you love to work in, or one you despise every single time you walk into it. That leads me into design tip number 2, pick a palette and stick with it. And this includes everything from your cabinetry to your flooring to your finishes. From the very beginning of the design process, you want to pick a color palette and stick with it. Introducing too many colors into this process is going to lead to a kitchen that ultimately feels chaotic and overwhelming. Now, an important aspect of talking about color palette is discussing where exactly the kitchen sits within your house. If it is closed off in a separate room, you're going to want to pick lighter colors and a lighter palette to keep the space feeling open and airy. However, if your kitchen is part of an open concept living area, because you have all this extra space, you can go a little more bold with your color palette and introduce much darker colors than you typically would in a smaller, closed off space. So moving right along, we're at point number 3, and that's cabinetry. Cabinetry color, selection, placement, all of this is critical to how your small kitchen space is going to feel once the design is complete. As I mentioned earlier, lighter colors, especially in the cabinetry, can help open up a space and make it feel airy, whereas darker colors will often close it off a little bit more. Now, that's not to say dark colors are bad, because when used in the right context, they actually are a fantastic choice for kitchen cabinets. But it's just as important as cabinetry color is cabinetry layout. There is a fine line between adding enough cabinets to create enough storage in your small kitchen space, while adding too many cabinets to make it feel congested and closed off. So what I often like to do is break up the cabinetry. Now the easiest way to do this is above the range. Instead of including a cabinet here, use a wall-mounted range hood. This adds a focal point and breaks up the monotony of a wall of cabinetry. Another common way to break up kitchen cabinetry is to include open shelving. Now this is kind of a hot button topic, and before you go blasting me in the comments, hear me out. I like to include open cabinet shelving or open shelving in very specific areas for very specific reasons, and typically never for our common dishware. And here is why. We cook in our kitchens. We use them for everyday living, whether it's homework, gathering, meeting, you name it. And dust gathers, grease travels, and the last thing I want to do is have to wash all of my dishes before I go to use them every single time. However, some specifically placed open cabinets for a decorative vase or your cookbooks is a whole nother option. And that generally creates that open area look we're after while actually remaining still functional. So while some may consider it a fad and others may consider open shelving a trend, they definitely have their space and their place in kitchen design, even more so in small kitchen design. Continuing along that cabinetry train of thought, another option to help create a little bit more open and airiness to your space is to use glass doors on all of your wall cabinets. They're open, they're see-through, and we can often add lighting within to create an extra layer of depth and another focal point of interest within the kitchen. Finally, the last point of discussion under cabinetry is not everything needs to be a kitchen cabinet. It is very common to use any piece of furniture as a pantry or a hutch or some sort of storage element placed adjacent to the kitchen that still serves as a functional piece of furniture. So a great example here is using IKEA Billy bookcases and glass doors as a nice focal point pantry, or an old resurrected farmhouse wooden hutch as an extra storage pantry. All of these both serve to create some visual interest in the space, as well as doubling as extra storage. Now I just mentioned including lighting inside some glass cabinetry, and that brings me to point number 4, which is lighting your space. Lighting is one of the most often overlooked part of designs, and I have an entire video, I'll throw it up there, talking all about the importance of kitchen lighting and the options available to light our kitchens in design. And this is even more important in a small kitchen. Brighter is better. However, it's key to think about exactly where you want your lighting to be. Now in large kitchens we typically have islands or peninsulas where we like to hang pendants. This gives some visual interest as well as task lighting for that specific space. But if you don't have those in a small kitchen, you can still hang a pendant above your kitchen sink. Not only does this give some nice aesthetics to your design and tie in a little bit of your personality, it also adds functionality and makes sure you're not doing the dishes in the dark. Now another important area to consider is your prep space, and any countertop space you have should also be well lit. Now because we only have a certain number of can lights or pot lights up in the ceiling in small kitchens, we really want to make sure those prep spaces are also well lit. So including under cabinet lighting is a great way to make sure this happens and to make sure you're never working in the dark. Finally, another way to add some extra lighting to your kitchen is to include wall sconces. Whether it's above a window or above some open shelving, this is another way to create a little bit more visual depth and a little bit more light within that small kitchen space. Ultimately, lighting will play a major role in helping your small kitchen feel much larger than it actually is. Rolling right along into number 5, add in more prep area. Like I said in the very beginning, one of the typical problems with small scale kitchens is having enough countertop space to actually prep everything you want to be doing. You know, you want to have one thing going on the go on an island, another thing by the range, and still have room to pull something out of the fridge. That's not always an option in a small scale kitchen, so adding in some movable prep space is a great alternative. Now what do I mean by movable? Well, rolling carts or rolling islands are a great way. You can buy them straight off the shelf at somewhere like IKEA, or heck, I'm even working with a client right now who has bought a rolling toolbox to use as their kitchen island. It adds a little bit of an industrial element and it's bright red for some real visual pop to their space. However, it doesn't just have to be islands. Some other creative solutions are something like fold down wall peninsulas that can be folded up and moved out of the way when they're not needed. Now ultimately you might have to get a little creative because say you don't have the space for a rolling island, or maybe you don't even have the space for a fold down peninsula. But taking the time to think this through from the very beginning when you're planning your layout will have a huge impact on how you work in your space once it is complete. Now let's say you're sitting there going, well, I don't have room for that island, I definitely don't have room for any type of peninsula, but I still need more prep area and my kitchen still feels tiny. What do I do? Well, that leads me to point number 6, which is incorporate your dining area into your kitchen. The key to making this work is to think about your eating area and your kitchen from the very start as one unified space. So way back in that layout and design stage, think about it all as one. This will have a couple major benefits. First, it will create the feeling of a large open kitchen, which is really what will help make that small kitchen feel larger again. Second, it gives you an entirely secondary prep area, which can be really important when you don't have a lot of countertop space. Last but not least, bringing the eating space within our kitchen provides another seating area. This is really important when it comes to just general family times. Kids can hang out while mom or dad is cooking, or even social gatherings where friends can sit while somebody is prepping the food and they don't feel all alone and isolated or separated from the group. Including some form of a sitting area in our kitchen, whether it's a small scale kitchen design or a full-blown big kitchen design, is one of those functional additions that we really can't measure, but ultimately has a massive impact on how we use and spend time in the space once it is complete. Now I'm going to throw in one little bonus tip here at the end, and that is pay attention to every single detail. In a small kitchen, every design detail is amplified. Whether it's your cabinet hardware, your lighting, or even the objects styling the top of your countertops, they'll all play a role in how your kitchen comes together in the very end. Well, that brings us to the end of some of my tips for designing a small space. Now remember, these are just some of my ideas. Go out there and watch other videos, read some other blogs, and listen to some of the other designers and their ideas on how to, whether it's decorate or design small kitchen spaces. Because the more information you can gather, the better off your space is going to be in the end. Thanks a ton for watching, guys. If you got anything out of this video, make sure to smash that like button and click that subscribe button, and make sure to turn on the notifications, that little bell icon. Click that too, so you guys don't miss any of our future content. If you're interested in more kitchen design videos, I got a couple videos queued up for you guys there, and we'll see you in the next one.